right. Well, welcome everybody to the Goal Crushers call for tonight, whatever tonight is. I think it's January 4th. I am happy to be with you tonight as your trainer. My name's Kristin Donahue, not Jen Griswold, as the screen says. And I am joined tonight by the wonderful Lexus Achiever Premier 5, Stephanie Wallace. And we're going to be tag teaming to teach you about disciplining disappointment. So I'm a Premier Level 5 and Lexus earner in Grand Junction, Colorado. And we're both very excited to be working with you tonight. So I'm getting some echo, so go ahead and mute yourself if you haven't already. I think I can actually just mute everybody here. All right, so I'm muting everyone for now. We will unmute later when we open it up for discussion, but I don't want to have the feedback, so. All right, so let's go for it. So I know it's kind of funny to say that I'm excited to talk to you about disappointment. That seems like a phrase that really shouldn't go together, right? You shouldn't be happy to talk about disappointment. But I feel like I have a lot of experience in this area. Maybe some of you do as well. And Stephanie and I have had a lot of time to talk about this, and I feel like we've got some good information for you. So I do love Zoom because we can see your faces and see how you look, as Debbie said. But I also think it's nice because we can have a little bit of interaction. So this is a really timely topic as well because we're just coming off of December. So if you're on video on Zoom, just wave or give a thumbs up if any of this applies to you. Anybody disappointed with how December closed for you? Anybody? Anybody find that their volume was down just like a little bit, right? Anybody? Anybody maybe not quite hit the goals that they were hoping to hit? Yeah? Right? Okay, so this is a great time of year to be talking about disappointment. One more thing. Anybody working now with your team to set up next year's goals? Anyone? We all are, right? That's what we should be doing right now. So disappointment and how you handle those setbacks in your business is a huge part of goal setting with your team and also of managing yourself and making sure that you end up where you want to be next year at this time, at the end of 2017. So we're going to share some tips for you on how to do that. Now, I feel like Rodan & Fields has really been, for me, a trial by disappointment fire. In the past, I really didn't struggle with this very much. I felt like whatever goals I set, I was able to hit. And I really didn't have too much failure that I had to face in my life. So what does that say? I was not dreaming big enough at all. Rodan & Fields is like a natural breeding ground for disappointment. So what do I mean by that? Well, the whole point is we have to get people to tell us no, right? That's our job, is to get to the no's. We have to dream big, really big, so big that often you might not quite get there. And we also have to rely on other people for our success, which means that sometimes hitting a goal is a little bit out of your control. So all this means that there's going to be times in your Rodan & Fields business, if you're doing it right, you're going to experience some disappointment. The key thing that you control is not so much whether you hit the disappointment, but how you choose to respond to it. So Stephanie and I tonight have 7 suggestions for you, tools that we've used to help us get over some of those humps in our business. So suggestion number 1 is to quit expecting it to be easy. So I remember when I first started with this business, hearing a training call with Jamie Peterson, and she shared a quote that I think many of us have heard over and over. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. And that one stuck with me in the beginning because I had already set a couple goals that I had pushed for and didn't make it. And I wasn't used to that. And I was thinking, what the heck? Am I doing something wrong? I mean, why am I not making these goals that I'm setting? And when Jamie said that, it won't be easy, but it will be worth it, I knew she was spot on. So I wrote that on my desk in a spot where I could see it. A lot of times when we're disappointed, we have this tendency to ask, why me? Like, why did this happen to me? What am I doing wrong? Why does so-and-so seem to have so much more success and not me? Why did my last consultant quit? Why do people keep telling me no? Why me? Why me? And what you really have to stop and ask yourself is, why not you? Like, is there something special about you that says that you're not ever going to have challenges and everybody else is going to have to work for this, but it's going to come easy to you, and that you're not going to have any problems and it's just going to fall right in your lap? Of course not, right? So why not you? We're all going to be in the same boat with having that disappointment. So one of the first things you have to remind yourself is, instead of looking at it and saying, why me? What's wrong? What did I do wrong? Stop, stop for a minute and just say, why not me? I mean, I guess it's my turn. It's my turn to get the no. It's my turn to have to move through this and keep on working. And there's nothing about me that makes me more special than anyone else, that I'm not going to have the bumps in the road and the disappointments that everybody else has. So don't trust the people who tell you this is going to happen overnight. It's going to be super easy. Instead, trust the system. Trust that success is absolutely possible for every single one of us. And if we keep working for it and keep our belief in it, it will happen. So instead of saying, why me, say, why not me? Quit looking for that easy and just understand, first of all, embrace it. Disappointment's going to happen, so be ready for it. All right, for tip 2, I will turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Kristin. So tip number 2 is also going to feel a little strange to you all, because what I'm asking you to do is go ahead and feel and experience the pain of disappointment. Because if you don't acknowledge that, sometimes it's harder to get out of it. So, and the best way to deal with disappointment is to actually feel it and not to run from it. Don't try to hide from the disappointment, but go ahead and allow yourself to walk through the pain, because that's okay. The sooner you process through it, the sooner you can move forward. My key message here, I think, is and I've been victim to this in this business, is not to let yourself be paralyzed in the long haul, because it's harder to come out of that kind of woe is me attitude when you continue to let yourself dwell in it. And I've tended to mope a little bit too long the last couple of months, to be honest with you, in that kind of dwelling and moping mode. But when I came out of it, I worked harder than ever. So do what you need to do, you know, whether that's drinking a little wine or eating a little chocolate, but then get into the healthy modes again, as far as drinking lots of water, take a bath, take a walk. Talk through it with your upline. I am lucky enough to have Kristin Donahue as my upline. So when I get into that funk and I get into that disappointment mode, I can talk to her. And one of the things she always reminds me of is that resilience is a major attribute for leaders in this business. And so bounce back, take the bull by the horns so that you can focus on that positive energy again. And one way of doing this is actually our third little key nugget that we're going to give to you, which is be proactive. I used to work for a very large company in Minneapolis several years ago, and I was a corporate trainer, and our culture and our values and reward system were all heavily based on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if any of you have been through that course, you'll know that the first habit is be proactive. And being proactive is a big part of how we react to disappointment in this business. So as Kristin and I have already stated, when it comes to disappointments in this business, it's important to realize that's a part of our journey. And so this is about how do we react to it. Martin Luther King Jr. stated that we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Just meaning that disappointment isn't forever. It will end at some point, but disappointments will continue happening in this business. And we have to continue to look for hope, because it always gets better. And I'll be honest with you, there are times that I've felt like when I was running for 5, this happened. When I ran for Lexus, this happened. You have that kind of feeling of moving forward is hopeless, and that the hard work that you've done is futile, and it makes you want to throw in the towel. So you need to dig deep for that resilience. And think back to habit 1, which is be proactive, which helps you change your attitude and choose a more positive response, get you back on track. And when we talk about overcoming disappointment, I guess I would challenge you to choose a proactive versus reactive attitude and response. Reactive people allow outside influences like moods or feelings or circumstances that are beyond their control to control their responses to disappointment. And in our business, that might look like you shut down, or you get angry at other people and try to kind of put out some blame to other people, or you feel depressed, or you just want to quit. And if you find yourself blaming those external circumstances that you really don't have as much control over as you'd like, then it's more difficult to kind of get over that hump. So don't put the blame out on other people, but try to kind of step back and look at your own accountability and your own responsibility for the outcome. And if you don't do that, it's too easy to fall into that reactive mode and that reactive category. Proactive people respond a lot differently to disappointment. They use the space, and I'm literally talking about the space between the stimulus and the disappointment, to how they respond. And they use that space in between that response and that stimulus to do something that will help them to make a wiser decision or a wiser choice. And just as a little aside, I used to be a director for human resources at a utility, and we had a lineman who would never put any space between the stimulus and the response that would set him off. So I told him to get a little rubber band and put it on his wrist, and every time he was going to react, he needed to snap himself so that he wouldn't react negatively, so that he could really truly take the time that he needed to think about a wise choice in how he was going to respond to whatever stimulus that he had. So the stimulus within disappointment in this business might be a partner not signing, or a missed promotion, or not qualifying for a trip. And these are very raw, recent disappointments for me. So I am familiar with the emotions that comes with. How we choose to respond to any of these kinds of situations is really truly up to us. So what proactive people do is take responsibility for the outcome. They look at possible plans for resolution, and then they choose to respond in a positive and oftentimes action-oriented manner. And they look at what has worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, what may have contributed to the disappointment in the first place, and then they look at what they should do differently next time. So knowing that my own behaviors contributed to missing some of the goals that I wanted to achieve in order for me to move forward effectively, I need to acknowledge that, and I need to do something different to prevent it next time. So where reactive people might say there's nothing I can do, or if only, or they did this to me, proactive people will ask themselves, what is the best thing I can do under these circumstances? So I'm disappointed about XYZ. What is the best thing I can do under these circumstances? And they use language like, I choose to. What are options to? And proactive people actually understand our fourth point. They understand that clarity in the disappointment is actually power. So understand that clarity about your disappointment is power, is number 4. And when we look at disappointed, we can see that it's rooted in negative emotions or sadness and oftentimes stress too. A lot of you work full-time jobs, and so to have Rodan Fields not go exactly the way you want it is tough sometimes. So when we're disappointed in things, we might lack the willpower to continue because we're afraid of that failure. We're afraid of that disappointment and that it's going to happen again. But through disappointment, if we gain clarity and we see it as power, then we can take a different route. So when I'm disappointed, I analyze where my disappointment is coming from to get a clear look at what went wrong. Were my expectations off? Did I set a goal that was unrealistic or not a smart goal? I ask myself, was I present for my team if there is a team-oriented goal that I've missed out on? Did I spend too much time comparing myself to others? Because I often do that as well. And if you say you don't do it, you're lying, because you know you do. You look at other ways. Or more importantly, did I do everything I was capable of doing to prevent the negative outcome in the first place? So when I process the initial sense of disappointment and I get to the root of what I'm accountable for and what I can do differently, I find myself refocusing on my why. I fall back on tried processes of what worked with this, and then I can clarify what my next steps need to be to try again. And what I find is when I step up and I overcome that disappointment, it actually makes me more determined to go after that why again and go after those goals and then eventually achieve success again. So Kristin, I'll pass the baton to you for number 5.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so Stephanie and I talked before that sometimes her internet gets kind of unstable, especially when there's a big storm. So I noticed somebody just said in the comments, is anyone else hearing it cut out? I think that was because of Stephanie's internet. So if you're still hearing the cutout now that I'm talking, feel free to comment in the comments and let us know. But I'm hopeful that we're back to normal now. All right, so thank you. I'm going to move us on to step number 5, or piece number 5, that you can use to help discipline your disappointment. And that's just, you've had a little time now. We kind of told you to wallow in it. Suck it up. It's not just you. It's going to happen to everybody. But then work in it. Get used to it. Really think it over. The first 4 steps that we gave you are things that are kind of reflecting on what happened. Why did it happen? Why did it happen to you? What did you do? So now it's time to move forward. So the next thing we want you to do is to start looking to the future. Instead of looking to the past, it's time to kind of suck it up, buttercup, and keep moving. So number 5 is to create purposeful goals. So some of that, sometimes our disappointment comes because we didn't set a good, clear goal in the first place. Other times, maybe we had the goal, but we just didn't quite get where we wanted to get. Whatever it is, once you've had a chance to analyze, you have to turn around and decide what's next. Where are you headed? What's coming down the road for you? We may be completely, totally devastated by this, what we consider a failure on our part, but deep down, that's still not going to change the why. It's not going to change your purpose. It's not going to change why you're doing this. So you have to keep moving. So you can assess the goals that you set in the past and use that to help structure the goals that you're going to set now. But really, it gives you a wonderful opportunity to reshape your goals a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. So I've been with Radiant and Fields for 5.5 years now. When I started, I had what we thought at the time was a fast start. People do it way faster now, but I hit 5 in 6 months, which I was like, yes! I thought that was awesome. I was super excited. And then the following year, I just kept sliding backwards. For every one person I would add, 2 people would quit. And a year after I hit 5, I felt like I was more behind than I had ever been with my business. I was so disappointed. In my mind, by that point, I should have been an Alexis. And instead, I was struggling, sometimes hitting level 3, level 4. Often months I wasn't even a level 5 anymore. So that was really hard for me, feeling like I wasn't measuring up. I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do, hitting the goals I wanted to hit. And so partly I had to look at my goals and say, sometimes the goals I was setting, instead of saying, I will do this by this date, I will be in my Lexus by December. Well, maybe not. Instead, I started setting goals that were more focused on activity. I will do 5 reach outs a day because that I can control. Now, whether or not 5 people say yes to me in one day, I can't control, but I can control if I do the activity every day. So I started setting goals that were more purposeful, more focused on action and activity. I will meet 3 people for coffee every week to talk about Radiant and Fields. I will bring 3 3-way calls every week to my upline leader. Those were goals I could control, that I could count on, that could help. Goals like, I will be this by this date. Now, yes, that's important. It gives you something to shoot for. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying don't do just that. Don't just link your goals to a title and a date. Instead, link your goals to the activity that it's going to take to get to that title and that date. We're going to talk more about this in just a second, but this also comes into play when you're coaching your teams. So when you're trying to help your team figure out how they set goals, you want to be careful because sometimes we have this mother instinct to protect our team. Maybe we've set a goal and failed at it and didn't quite make it. And so we either do this to ourselves or to people on our team. We try to help them draw back. I don't want you to get hurt like I did. So let me just make sure you realize that's not quite realistic. You really probably want to be shooting for something lower. We do it to ourselves too. I've the extreme case for this, and I did this when I started hitting those phases, those months where I just couldn't get where I wanted to get. I started setting goals like, we'll just see. I just want it to happen. So I'm just going to keep working and I want it to happen. Have you guys ever said something like that? Have you ever heard somebody on your team say, I just want Lexus to happen naturally. I just want level 5 to happen naturally. Well, yeah, me too. I want RFX to happen naturally. That'd be fabulous, but it's not going to happen, right? When we start setting goals that are so namby-pamby and wishy-washy that we're just hoping it will happen, we're trying to protect ourselves from disappointment, but really what we're doing is selling ourselves short. So don't do that. Don't let your teams do that. Find a way to set goals that are purposeful, that keep the vision in mind, and that keep you headed in the right direction. Don't be afraid of letting yourself dream for those big goals, even if you haven't hit them in the past. Doesn't mean you can't keep dreaming for them, but back it up. That's what we'll talk about next. So along with the goals, you guys have all heard this stuff before, but it's just a reminder, make sure you write it down, share it with somebody so you've got some accountability, make sure it's visible, put it somewhere on your desk, on your screensaver, somewhere where you're going to see some of those goals pop up and remind you what you're supposed to be doing, and then stick to it. Remember that goals that are set on paper and are defined in front of you, you are far more likely to achieve. That's been validated time and time again, so it just deserves mentioning, even though you probably have heard it before. Tip number 6, which just goes right along with this, after you've set the goals, then you really need to evaluate your habits. So the goals are where we want to get. The habits are more of how we're going to get there. And this really just involves getting to work. So it's time for you to do a little gut check. Maybe you had a big goal and you didn't quite make it. You're the only one who really knows. Were you doing the reach outs? Were you doing the one-to-ones? Were you doing the coaching? Were you consistent? One of the things I noticed in all the homework you guys did last week, consistently in your homework videos, you talked about being consistent, that you're really going to commit to your business this year and you're going to commit to the activity that it takes to be successful. Well, that's also what it takes to get over your disappointment. So making sure the habits that you're putting in place are really going to support the goal that you've set. I did a goal setting call with a consultant a couple weeks ago, and her goal is a $5,000 per month paycheck. So that sounds good, right? And then she told me her plan was going to be to recruit one consultant a month. Do you think she's going to get a $5,000 a month paycheck recruiting one consultant a month? No, that's not going to line up. So it's not just about setting the goals. It's also about evaluating the habits that you're using day in and day out. We all, if we're asked to, can dream, right? And we can dream really, really big. But if we don't put the feet under that, the legs, all this, the framework in place to make that dream come together, we're going to keep embracing disappointment over and over. So ask yourself if you learned anything from the last disappointment. What I think a good question that I go over often with my leaders, and I use it with myself too, is to just take a piece of paper and divide it into thirds. On one third, ask yourself, what am I going to start doing? On another third, ask yourself, what am I going to stop doing? And then on the other third, what am I going to keep doing? So anytime you're coming to a fork in the road, a new opportunity to plan, a new opportunity to set goals and to dream a little bit, even just at the end of every month, thinking about what went right this month and what didn't. If you stop for a minute and just think about what am I going to stop doing, start doing, and keep doing, that helps you move in the right direction. The key to all of that is doing. So it's not just about dreaming, it's about putting the action into place so that you're not facing the disappointment as often. Now, just because you set goals and you find the habits and get to work, does that guarantee that you're going to hit them? Of course not. And remember, if you're doing it right, if you're dreaming big enough, you're probably often still not going to hit them. But it means that when you assess it, you're not going to come back and say, I really screwed this up. Instead, you're going to come back and say, well, I tried my hardest. I set a good goal. I didn't quite get there, but I still grew. I saw good things happen. So it's not going to feel so bad to fail, to not hit the goal, when you can look at your habits and say, I did what I'm supposed to do. So a great example of habits is the pre-work. Instead of homework, it was the pre-work that we ask you to do tonight. So if you had the chance, we ask you to hop over to the Giver's Favorite Things page and watch the short video that Jen posted there. If you haven't done it yet, do it after we get off the call tonight. But Jen has been talking about doing a 5-5-5 challenge. She got the idea from another RFX friend of hers who's had great success with it. And as leaders, we are encouraging all of you to adopt this with your team. So the 5-5-5 or 5-a-day challenge, whatever you want to call it, basically just says you want to be adding 5 new Facebook contacts a day, doing 5 fresh reach outs a day, and 5 follow-up reach outs a day. Now watch the video, because she does explain in a little more detail what this looks like, so that if you're kind of freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Her 5 reach outs to her are pretty simple. It could be as simple as just sending a message saying, hey, Happy New Year, and initiating a conversation. It doesn't always have to be immediately to the business. But it's just opening up contact and re-engaging with people. So what we're challenging you to do is do this 5-a-day challenge for 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks of the month, or the first 6 weeks of 2017. As leaders, if you want to see big growth, you're not going to just do this yourself, but you're going to make this a habit within your team so that they're doing it too. So the RFXer who shared this with her went from around 150,000 in team volume, or 120,000, to almost 1 million in team volume in 1 year. That's fantastic growth. That's momentum. That's huge, huge growth. So the power really that this is showing you is what happens when, rather than getting sucked into a disappointment, you use that to fuel you and to give you new habits that you also then share with your team. So tip number 6 is to examine your habits and then get to work. Specifically, right now, I'd say do that 5-a-day challenge. But after each disappointment, it might look a little different. But it's really just time to look at what's your daily activity like and how can you put that to work for you. All right, so Stephanie, I'll turn it back to you for the next one.
Sounds good. And I apologize about my internet. It's really cold here. It tends to do wonky things with our everything, our whole house. So number 7 is measuring and tracking your results. So in order to achieve your goals, whatever those goals might be, you need to measure and track your results. And I know that a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not going to mutilate her last name, but Stephanie A., who's on this call tonight, was had a great spreadsheet that she shared with all of us. So that is one example of a spreadsheet that you can measure and track your results. But here's why it's important as it relates to disappointment. Metrics help you to understand how far you've come and where you are and how far you have. No one likes to face disappointment, but you can only truly be disappointed if you give up entirely at something. So by measuring and tracking your results, you can gain some understanding of what you've accomplished. Often it's harder for us to see the positives when we're working so hard towards a goal and it doesn't come to fruition. We kind of dwell in that negativity, but the truth is it's often easier to see the downsides and the negative aspects of a situation. But when that happens, we begin to question ourselves. We lose motivation and inspiration to move forward, and that's not healthy for our business. So while I may not have the title I want with this business, and I may not have qualified for some trips, I know from tracking that there was some really good things. And that's why it's really important to be able to look at those metrics. My volume continues to increase. Our team's volume continues to increase. We had a great recruiting month in December, even though our numbers weren't all that as good as they could have been in December. So those kinds of things to provide the silver linings can help when you're disappointed about something else. So my suggestion is to set SMART goals and track your success to see what you're accomplishing, and hopefully that will help you to offset some of the disappointment along the way. And if you saw the Insider Scoop today, there's a great measurement tool that they've put out there for monthly planning, and it can help you and your teams plan and measure and track results as well. They've done a really good job at setting that up. So again, habit 7 is just making sure that you've got some system in place to measure and track your results. And I'll hand it back to Kristin to do a little wrap up and assign some homework.
Awesome. Well, I hope this has helped give you guys a variety of options when you're looking at disappointment. You know, sometimes you are just going to need to get into it, wallow in it, walk through it, you know, figure out why it's bothering you so much. Then you can move into taking some action, evaluating where you're at, setting some new goals, evaluating your habits, and then finally moving into the final phase of tracking what's happening should give you tools so that the next time you're disappointed, you can look at this more clearly and figure out why it caused you problems, where the problems might have been. Maybe it was mental, maybe it was activity-based, what was the issue, and help you move on a little bit faster. The faster you can move on, the faster you get to the next phase in your business that's going to be the positive. The more you let it derail you, the more it just slows you down, the more you'll look back and see black holes in your business that are days or weeks or even months long, simply because you didn't push through those disappointments. So I hope what Stephanie and I have shared tonight gives you some thought and some ideas on how to avoid those black holes and keep yourself moving. Your homework for tonight, we've got a few things for you. First of all, the real Jen Griswold, not me that says Jen Griswold, but the real Jen, is going to post a little graphic for you with our homework. And on that graphic, what we'd like you to do is just share a disappointment that you've experienced and how you worked through it. We all have different things that help us when we're at a bump in the road. Maybe it's wine, maybe it's chocolate, maybe it's a workout, maybe it's calling your mom, maybe it's taking a bath, but we can learn from each other. So if you briefly just share one bump in the road that you hit and how you got over it, then maybe you'll give all of us a new idea for how we're going to handle the next bump in the road ourselves. So your first piece of homework is to share one disappointment and how you got over it. The second piece of homework is to take that 5-a-day challenge that we talked about. Go watch the video on Giver's Favorite Things so you understand what we're talking about, and then take the challenge for yourself. If you have experienced any disappointment in the last few months, whether it was December, November, October, if there's been any bump in the road for you, you need to do it. If there hasn't been a bump in the road for you, set bigger goals. So my guess is most of us have had something that we're not quite as happy with in the last few months, right? That's just part of the business. So that 5-a-day challenge activity, that's what's going to get any one of us over that disappointment and moving forward. So we want you to take that challenge for yourself, but we also want you to take that challenge for your team. Think about what that is to your team. Maybe 5 a day just sounds like way too much, and you need to say for your team it's 3 a day. But I would caution you there. I would much rather see you stick with the 5, push for it, make it happen, maybe fall a little bit short, than to set the bar lower and let your team set the bar lower too. Instead, I'd just say stick with the 5, push it, show your team how to push it, lead from the front, and model that behavior. So commit to yourself and to your team. Think about what that's going to look like. Perhaps you want to do a weekly accountability call with your team. Perhaps you want to share the tracking spreadsheet that Jen can share with us. Maybe you want to share that with your team to let them track it. Maybe you want to do a little prize for anybody who sticks with the 5 a day. You decide what it looks like, but figure out how you're going to implement this. And then your third piece of homework is to talk to your accountability teams. You guys are all partnered up with 2 or 3 or 4 people. So decide together, how will you hold each other accountable for those 5 reach outs a day? Maybe you want to have a team competition, your team versus somebody else's team within your accountability partnership. Maybe you just want to keep it to each of you and text at the end of the week and say, hey, did you do your 25? I did my 25. It's up to you and your group what's going to most work for you, but find a way that you can hold each other accountable. So your 3 things, share a disappointment and how you handled it. Take the 5-a-day challenge and decide how you're going to implement it. And then talk to your accountability group and decide how you will keep each other on track for this 5-a-day challenge. With that, we will wrap up our official material, but we're still here to chat with you. So if you have questions or comments or anything else you want to share, we would love to hear from you. I've got everybody muted right now. Can you manually unmute yourself, or do I need to do it? Yes? No?
Can unmute.
Okay, Katie, thank you. Okay, I thought you could. So if you guys have a question or a comment, share it. We would love to hear your thoughts.
I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it, Kate.
Okay. So on the video today, it said that she had her team do the 5-a-day challenge 7 days a week. You just said 5 days a week. So what do you think? I know for my personal team, if I try and tell them to work 7 days a week, they will ho and hum about that. So do you think 5 days a week is good for this challenge?
Yeah, we don't want a mutiny. What Jen has been saying and what I'm doing with my team is 5 out of the 7 days.
Okay, awesome.
And even I think you can be flexible beyond that. Perhaps it's even 25 a week, because for your folks who are working full time, it may not fit with them. They may have to kind of bunch it into 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
But if they're hitting those numbers, but honestly, it's up to you. You're the leader. You can decide how you want to do it. That's just what I'm doing. And that was what Stephanie was saying as well. So
okay, perfect. That's because we talk 5 days a week on my team, but I just kind of wanted to double check that for the homework.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Thanks.
Hey, and if I can just jump in on that one just real quick. I think to remember why we're doing this too, the whole point of this exercise is to teach people what a good groove of reach outs feels like. So you're going to get all these questions. I always love it. It's like being the teacher and then everybody's like, does this count? Does this count? You know, there's no right or wrong. What you really want to always come back to is, are they understanding what consistency feels like? Are they understanding what good pace in their business feels like? And are they building confidence because they're being consistent enough that the reach outs are getting easier, the 3-way call language is getting easier, and they're getting more and more activity done. That's the whole point. So you decide what that looks like for your team. There's no right or wrong. Good question.
Awesome. Anybody else have thoughts? Okay, so June just added a comment that I think we can talk about. She said, adding new people, in my experience, is that new people you add can normally see through the small talk when they see your walls with R&F. So any ideas how to be tactful? Stephanie, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to jump on that one?
I can jump on it a little bit. I think it depends on your history with the person. And so, I mean, when I friend somebody that I haven't talked to for a long time on Facebook, I'm not going to message them right away about Rhode Island. I think that this is another reason why we have to have a well-balanced Facebook page of personal and Rodan Fields, because if you are all about Rodan Fields on your Facebook page, then absolutely they're going to see right through that, because they're going to be like, well, what else is there to you? You don't want them to just see Rodan Fields. So I think that there's an amount of time to wait to bring up Rodan Fields if it's kind of an out of the blue contact or a new contact. But if you've been friends with them for a couple of weeks and they've posted something on their Facebook and you want to message them and just say, hey, saw that picture of your adorable kids. You're opening up a conversation. You're not bringing up Rodan Fields. That's okay. Eventually, you're going to find a place where it's going to be a better fit. So prove them wrong is my advice as far as that. See through it. Prove them wrong. Don't bring up Rodan Fields right away. If in person, sometimes it's a little bit easier than that. But on the Facebook thing, no, probably not. That's my opinion.
Good. Great. And June said great. All right. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions? Anything we missed, like your key thing that you do to handle disappointment and we didn't even talk about it? Feel free to share it so we can all learn.
Kristin.
Yes.
Hi, it's Katie. Did I totally miss number 4 when you were going through?
You totally did. I'm sure it wasn't us. It was definitely you. Let me see. Okay, number 4 was Stephanie talking about understanding that clarity is power.
Okay.
So really getting a clear picture of what caused the disappointment. Were your goals not set properly? Was it something activity-based that you did or didn't do? You know, really what we talked about with that one was just the fact that a lot of the times, right when things are at their worst, you know, when you're hitting those phases where you're just like, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'm horrible at this, maybe I should just give up, maybe I'm awful, all of a sudden it feels like a little spotlight just shines in on you and you're like, oh, now I get it. And a lot of times that's what disappointment gives you, is this clarity for, I wasn't doing this right, or I'm focused on the wrong things, or I'm caring about the wrong things, but it gives you some clarity that maybe you didn't have before. And that's really powerful. It's like the silver lining of disappointment that a lot of times we gloss right past it. So understanding that there's some power that comes from trying and failing or not quite getting to where you want to be. So that was number 4. Sure. Let's see. All right, Jen, can you post the tracker that Sarah referenced? Absolutely. We'll make sure that Jen posts the tracker on the page tomorrow so you guys can all duplicate it with your teams.
Well, Kristin and Stephanie, thank you so much for being the guest trainers. You always do a fantastic job. I love that you get to bring your perspective, and both of you have such relevant, you know, messages to give tonight. And I think the one thing that everybody can take away from tonight too, and I love the intersection they just made with our 555 startup. And as you can tell today, people are pumped about this, you guys. So your teams want to run. You need to be the leader, be out in front of them, show them that the 555 works, because I guarantee you, everybody on here, if you do it, it's going to work. And be really honest with yourself. If you haven't been doing this kind of activity until today, start over, start fresh right now, and start tracking those reach outs, because I promise they're going to work. And we had all declared we want to be level 5 by the end of this month. And for some of you, the reality is it's just not happening. And that's okay, but don't give up on that. And that's exactly what tonight was about. It's time to regroup, revamp, get your mind in the right place again, and then keep driving forward, because there's just so much good coming in this year and so much good energy, as you can kind of feel, which always happens in the new year, which is why I love it. So thanks, ladies, for being amazing and for some great training tonight. And we'll definitely get the recording up here, and also I will put that tracker. I have to kind of pull off people's information, but I'll put a fresh one out there for you.
Thanks, Jen.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, take care. Have a good one.